Firebreather, a movie I'd never heard of until I started doing research for the month, and that alone made a really fun surprise. It feels like those one of those weird forgotten projects that somehow slipped through the cracks, because the core idea is actually incredibly strong. The concept is highly original, and as someone who loves kaiju movies, this is basically built to appeal to me. Giant monster action, transformation elements, city smashing, exactly my kind of thing. You can also very clearly feel the era this came from. It has a lot of similarities to shows like American Dragon and Danny Phantom, which makes sense, this came out around that same time. It really feels like Cartoon Network saw what Disney and Nick were doing with teen heroes dealing with supernatural powers and thought, let's do our own version of that. And I get it, because this has a lot of that same appeal. It has that cool normal kid who has extraordinary abilities set up, but mixed with kaiju action, which helps it stand out. The animation is definitely a mixed bag. Sometimes it looks really good, and other times it has that plasticky CGI that hasn't aged well. It reminded me a little bit of like the early episodes of Clone Wars, and at times where it also kind of looks like Miraculous and Troll Hunters, like that style where it almost feels like it wants to be a CGI anime but never quite fully gets there. It's not ugly, but at times it can look off just enough to be distracting. And there are moments where the character model's movement feels stiff, and it keeps the movie from looking as polished as the concept deserves. The pacing is another issue. At only about an hour long, the movie moves a little too quickly for its own good. It has enough ideas here to support a full hour and a half, maybe even more, but instead it feels like it has to rush from one major beat to the next. Because of that, some of the emotional moments of world building do not get as much room to breathe as they should. You can tell there is a bigger, more fleshed out version of the story hanging underneath what we got. What makes the movie especially interesting is how it feels caught between the age groups. A lot of the material feels like it wants to push into PG-13 territory, but it's clearly restricted by a PG rating and the Cartoon Network brand. That creates this weird tonal tension where it feels more aggressive and edgy than a lot of standard Cartoon Network fare, but yet still not mature enough to fully commit to being something older teens or adults would latch onto on Adult Swim. It feels stuck at the middle. That may be part of why it never became a series. I can also imagine executives looking at it worrying that it overlapped too much with something like Ben 10. With Cartoon Network, merchandising potential is always part of the conversation, which is funny because this actually has a lot of toy potential. Monster forms, transformations, action figures, vehicles, playsets, the possibilities are all there. On paper, it really feels like this should become a much bigger franchise. Honestly, I would love to see this get a reboot someday. The premise is too good to stay buried forever. A modern version with better animation, a longer runtime, and a clearer sense of tone could be fantastic. Part of me thinks like someone like Guillermo del Toro could do something really cool with it, because he understands monsters better than almost anybody. But at the same time, the way he ended Troll Hunters and Pinocchio had a lot to be desired, so I would still be a little cautious. He hasn't quite earned um, my confidence back yet. Still, the idea of someone with that kind of visual imagination tackling this world is exciting. Even with its flaws, I really enjoyed the movie. The animation can look a bit off at times, and it does not always seem totally sure its target audiences, but the originality of the kaiju premise and the sheer ambition of it all carried me through. It is the kind of project that feels bigger than what it ended up being, and that is what makes it so frustrating. There was real potential for a full-fledged series here. It's a shame it never got the chance to grow into what it could have been. Overall, I had a great time with it. It can be a bit rushed, it can be a little awkward in places, but it's also creative, memorable, and genuinely cool. For a forgotten Cartoon Network movie, this was a surprisingly strong watch. For me, it gets an A, a 9 out of 10, and 4 out of 5 stars.